Good evening. I hope this finds you well. My name is Mike Pastella, and I'm the Assistant Director of Campus Life for Student Involvement. And this evening, I look forward to sharing with you about building community within and beyond your student organization. As we go through tonight's presentation, there may be some live participation from those attending, and this is also being recorded so that it can be viewed in the future by student organization officers and members, so you can use it as a resource in the future once we post it on our page for YouTube. Before we have community, we have groups. Groups need to develop the following to transform into communities. So your student organizations started out as groups, interest groups, people interested in coming together for a cause, a topic, a purpose. And that's why that's one's first. And then that purpose led to a structure and processes, and all this played out over time. Timelines that are rigid, timelines that are flexible, some that continue, some that end. And we're going to take a look at these different areas: purpose, structure, processes, and time in this presentation, and how they apply to your student organization building community. Purpose. It's really key to think about, what is your purpose? What is the purpose of your student organization? Often when I'm working with or assisting student organizations that are having challenges, it's because they've lost focus of this. And in some ways that means kind of going back to being a group. Your purpose, your mission statement, what's in your constitution, the reason that you exist, should be near and dear to your meetings, your programming, and what you do that way. How you share your purpose with others is key to your success. If I'm the philosophy club, then obviously there's an interest for those that are philosophy majors, but then also people who may enjoy philosophy but have a different major, and how you can reach out to them and share that. But it's key for the philosophy club that we know the purpose is to discuss, look at, study, share about, critique philosophy. And how do you make this central to all that you do? If you're the rugby club, it's important that your focus is on practice and functioning as a team, and knowing that you're looking at rugby, football, and how you do that. The focus isn't playing volleyball, or the focus isn't doing other types of programming, but it's making it central to, this is what we do in practice. Here's what we do on field, off field for practice, depending on the season, to move forward as a successful rugby club. Structure. How do group members or organization members, once you're a community in an organization, relate to one another? How does this take place? What means do you use to share information? Do you use your page in Laker Life? Do you use Instagram? Do you use a listserv? Do you text everything? Do you share certain things only in meetings when you're there live with others? And that live can be over Zoom. It doesn't have to be in a meeting room. And how are your meetings and programs set up? Do you have a formal agenda and program for the day? Do you take minutes so that you can see your history of events? Do you have set drills that you do if you're part of the volleyball club, moving forward that way in regards to, this is what we do for the first 15 minutes. This is what we do for the next 20 minutes. Here's what we do for the 15 minutes after that. And this is what we do to finish with whatever remaining time that we have. So thinking about, how are you relating to each other? How are you sharing information? And how are your meetings and programs and events set up? Because this structure is key to moving your purpose forward. The structure also enables your processes, or empowers your processes. Who are the leaders and collaborators in the group? So as you look at your organization, are you seeing just your officers as leaders? Or could that new member who transferred in from another campus and is a sophomore here at Oswego, who brings a great idea, could they be empowered to be a leader? It's okay if they don't have a title in that respect, but they could still be a leader if those with offices agree to collaborate with them and help them with a process. which leads us to thinking about how do you make decisions and share outcomes with everyone? Is a decision made just by the executive board? And if that's the case, how much community is being felt by the organization as a whole? Is there a standard vote where 51% make the decision? Is there an in-depth conversation that leads to consensus? And how does that impact things moving forward? All different things to think about. And maybe there's a time for different paths to be utilized. So there may be some crunch time decisions that an exec board has to make. There may be times when you have to say, okay, we're going to do a vote, and it's going to be 51% or 66%, depending on the importance or the need of outcome. But when you can do it, think about if there's a consensus, and what could that be done to build community throughout the newest members of the organization to those that have been there all 4 or 5 years at Oswego. Then thinking about what goes into making sure your meetings and programs are successful. How are you building them? How are you refining them for the next generation? So as you run a program, do you take notes on it? Do you create some lists of this worked, this didn't work? Do you create appropriate contact lists? If we need a speaker on this, we're going to reach out to Mike. He can be the speaker for that. That'll take care of things. If we know we're going to need catering, how far in advance do we have to go to auxiliary services? If we know what contract's going to be involved, how far in advance do we have to work with the SA Director of Finance or the SA President to sign that contract for us? So thinking about that, what goes into making these things successful? Utilizing your processes. And that leads us into time. Now, it'd be a neat effect. Maybe our friends from DMA, if they're watching this, because they recently posted on Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, could appreciate that if I was playing Time, that wonderful song off that album in the background here. But what are the important timelines you must work with? If you want to hold a dinner, obviously an era after pandemic, or you want to have a program out in the green space outside on campus, which now is covered in snow, what timelines are you working with? What type of program needs to be reserved a semester in advance? What needs a month in advance? What's a week in advance? What maybe can you do within 72 hours? Know those timelines. Train others on those timelines so that they know how that'll affect your process. Build it into your structure that way. How are you going to make efficient use of your time? One neat thing with Zoom is it makes it easier to share a PowerPoint like this sometimes. But in a presentation like this, the idea of small talk might get lost. In your business meetings, that might get lost, where maybe you start a few minutes late. Maybe there are those conversations at the end of the meeting. Are you building in small talk? Some of that informal time to connect with the members of your organization, because that has a huge impact on community. And as you're using time as a resource to help build this community that way, that's something to think about, those things that we take for granted when we're in person, but now need to approach a little differently when we're doing a lot of our business and programming and events in electronic format. Now, how does your history as an organization, along with your vision for the future, impact the structure and processes at the current time? Obviously, the pandemic's affected that too. If we were doing this presentation a year ago, we might have gone in a different direction with that than we would now. But what is your history? What programs have been there that maybe don't work anymore? So it's time to change the process or structure. What are some new things you can do? How does that affect, again, communication? 10 years ago, your organization was not using Instagram, wasn't using direct messaging, wasn't even using text groups to communicate. That's all happened in less than 10 years. So thinking about what do you do for the future? And again, that vision of the future is based off your purpose and how you're going to get there. So we have groups. Once we have our mutual purpose and a developed structure to support the processes we need to complete during our duration of operating, truly transform our group into a community. And your organization might be functioning more as a group, might be functioning more as a community. These are things that can change over time. A group might be a high-functioning community, but a couple of graduations, a couple of strong leaders who maybe didn't delegate enough, things can change very quickly in 3 or 4 semesters, and maybe the organization is acting more like a group. It needs to take more time again to revisit what is our purpose? What structures do we need to develop? What processes do those then enable? And during what time of operation? So your time of operation, you could be an organization like BSU that's been on campus for over 50 years. So that's one timeline. But you could also be thinking about, what do we need to do in a program month? What do we need to do to prepare for next year's Alana? What do we need to do to prepare for a speaker or a collab event that we want to do? And so there can be various timelines at play all at once, and that's okay. Now, once these things come together, it allows us to think of some of these key components of community. A common perspective and frame of view. Well, if we have a shared purpose and we're sharing that with our members, we're making that integral to what we do, that helps create that common perspective. We know that we've joined this group for an ends. We know that we have a frame of view of where we're going. If we're really going to be a community, it means that we need inclusion and diversity. And that's from majors, that's from ethnicity and race, gender, that's many, many things. And it can mean different things in organizations as far as affecting your processes as well. How are you voting? What are you doing with things? But it's key to have those voices at the table because they can help you enrich your purpose as you go back and look at new programming, look at change, and keep those historical markers that are still working well for your organization and moving forward. So to be inclusive, to have a diversity of people and opinion is key to community. You will be successful in inclusion and diversity if you can develop trust and transparency. Officers of organizations need to be transparent. They need to be sharing what's working and not working. There needs to be a level of trust from that new student who goes to the involvement fair and joins your organization through that graduating senior who's trained the current officers as they get ready to move on for their career or grad school. Trust and transparency are key in a community and big in something still under development in a group. A big difference between a group and a community. Open communication and dialogue. And that means multi-directional. That means that officers are sharing information with general members, but general members should be able to openly communicate and share ideas, perspectives, and thoughts with officers as well. This should also include your advisor. This should include other members of the campus community who might want to support or get involved in your community. So your organization is a community. You've moved on from just being a group. Or if the community broke down a bit and you kind of went back into group mode, you get back to being a community when you know how to effectively utilize your purpose, your structure, your processes, and time. If you're utilizing them right, you will develop community within your organization. And this would be a good time, if you're watching this in your organization meeting, to pause the video and now to kind of personalize what we've gone over. If you are in a centralized room or maybe on the notepad that's built into Zoom that way, having someone take some notes and thinking about, what is our purpose again? Someone pull out the Constitution. What's our purpose? What structures do we have in place? Where are we lacking structure? We need to work on that. What processes do we have in place? And what are our multiple timelines that are going on? And how do we work with them? So you can take some time now, draw that out on easel paper, draw that out on the pad here, have someone take notes on each one, so then you could share it in a Google Doc. So if your organization is functioning as a community, you're on top of your purpose. Everyone at your meetings and programs knows what that is. You have structures that are empowering processes. You're using your time well. You have great dialogue, transparency. Everyone feels included, and there's wonderful diversity in your organization. What's the next step? Your organization could be functioning as a community, but it's functioning within a community of organizations, nearly 200 of them on campus. Plus, there's residential communities. There's the off-campus community, both for students and members of Oswego that aren't part of the college directly. Now, beyond your organization, for the rest of our students, for the rest of our faculty and staff, where appropriate for them to be involved, do you provide community for those who aren't currently members of your organization? What programs, what events, what impact on campus do you have? How does that play out from the start of the year when we have the involvement fair? And that creates community for all our organizations. But then what community maybe comes from a specific program you do or in a special event that you host? And how can that be there for members who are not yet part of your active organization roster and directly involved in your community? Think about that. Because as you think about that, think about how would you include students in your organization's community directly? And maybe they don't want to join your organization. Maybe they don't want to formally vote. Maybe they don't want to be there every week. But maybe they do. Or maybe they want to support their roommate or their friend. Go to some of your programming and be like, hey, that group's great. I'm focused on these other two groups I'm a part of. But that organization's awesome. There's quite a community there. Even though I'm not an active voting member, I know if I go to their program, it's going to be great. Because thinking about how you support and engage those in the greater campus community will help you be more successful in bringing your purpose to life and one day achieving that dream of getting to your vision of where your organization can go, that higher place once you transform your purpose and move it forward. And then thinking about what role your organization plays in the community. When I think of organizations like BSU, who have come out and helped Alana, which is managed and run by many people, faculty, staff, students, lots of student organizations. But I think of the Peace Walk that didn't exist when I started working here, and see the impact that has on the greater community. Now, members of the CSU aren't going to join a student organization, but they can still have a sense of community doing that Peace Walk, going to the Juneteenth walk that took place, coming to campus programs that are appropriately advertised and held for the whole area in the city. Again, not your primary focus, that would be students, then where appropriate faculty and staff. But believe it or not, your organization can impact our greater community. And that's something to think about as your community is running really smoothly and you're meeting your purpose and your programs are going great, where you can go in the future. Now, I would like to thank you to those that attended this evening, but also really thinking about those of you that are going to use this as a resource for building your community within and beyond your student organization. So as we move forward from here, how do you use this video as a first step, the conversation starter for you and your organization so that you can move forward in building this community? Like the other programs that I've posted, many of you have taken advantage of this. Please feel free. My email is there, michael.pastella@oswego.edu. Once you've viewed this video with your organization, or if only as officers you viewed it and would like me to present it live to your organization, I'm happy to do that. To either present the PowerPoint live so we can talk about it as we go through it, focused on your organization becoming a community, or if you'd like to debrief it after you've watched it as an organization and then talk about how your community, what you're doing well, what you'd like to enhance and improve moving forward that way. I'd love to have those follow-up meetings with you and help out. I also like to note that some of the ideas here were adapted from the works of Susan Comovies in her Exploring Leadership Issues text. Thank you for those tonight who were participating in supporting the program. Thank you to those of you viewing in the future, and I look forward to following up and debriefing with you.